Some of the most famous faces in the world left us far too soon, or in ways that still spark questions decades later. In this video, we're visiting the final resting places of the most iconic celebrities in modern history: musicians, actors, athletes, and cultural icons whose deaths shaped headlines around the world. Some have grand monuments, others have no grave at all. Let's begin. Elvis Presley rests at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, on the grounds of the very mansion that made him a legend. The king of rock and roll died suddenly at just 42, officially from heart failure, though decades of speculation about prescription drug use have never fully faded. Millions still make the pilgrimage to Graceland every year, making it one of the most visited private homes in America, second only to the White House. Michael Jackson is entombed at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, inside a private mausoleum sealed off from public access. The King of Pop died from an overdose of propofol, a powerful anesthetic administered by his personal physician, Conrad Murray, who was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. His death sent shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry and reignited global conversations about the dangers surrounding celebrity medical care. Marilyn Monroe rests in a simple crypt at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. She died from a barbiturate overdose at just 36, a death that remains one of the most theorized in Hollywood history, with decades of speculation ranging from accidental overdose to darker conspiracies involving the Kennedy family. Fans still leave lipstick kisses on her crypt to this day. Princess Diana is buried on a small, private island within the grounds of her family's Althorpe estate in England, deliberately kept away from public access. She died in a high-speed car crash in a Paris tunnel in 1997, an event that became one of the most mourned deaths of the 20th century, with millions watching her funeral procession live around the world. Whitney Houston rests in Westfield, New Jersey, alongside family members. She was found drowned in a hotel bathtub the night before the 2012 Grammy Awards, with heart disease and long-term drug use listed as contributing factors. Her death stunned the music world, coming after years of public struggles that had already been closely followed by fans and media alike. Prince's ashes are enshrined at Paisley Park, his sprawling Minneapolis estate that has since been converted into a museum and memorial. He died from an accidental fentanyl overdose at 57, after reportedly taking counterfeit pain pills. His sudden death shocked fans worldwide, given his famously private and drug-free public image throughout most of his career. Freddie Mercury has no public grave. He was cremated after his death from AIDS-related bronchopneumonia, and to this day, the location of his ashes remains a closely guarded family secret, known only to a handful of people. Mercury kept his diagnosis private until just one day before his death, announcing it to the world only hours before he passed away. John Lennon also has no grave to visit. He was cremated after being shot outside the Dakota Building in New York City by a man who had asked for his autograph earlier that same day. His ashes were given to his wife, Yoko Ono, and their location has never been publicly disclosed, leaving fans instead to gather at the nearby Strawberry Fields Memorial in Central Park. Kobe Bryant rests at Pacific View Memorial Park in Corona del Mar, California. The NBA legend died in a helicopter crash in January 2020, alongside his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, and 7 others, while flying through foggy conditions to a youth basketball tournament. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the sports world and beyond, prompting tributes from athletes, world leaders, and fans globally. Robin Williams' ashes were scattered in San Francisco Bay, a place he loved deeply. The beloved actor and comedian died by suicide in 2014, a death later understood to be linked to an undiagnosed and aggressive form of dementia called Lewy body disease, which had been quietly affecting his mind and body in his final months. His passing sparked wider conversations about mental health and misdiagnosed neurological illness. Chadwick Boseman is buried near Belton, South Carolina, close to where he grew up. The Black Panther star died from colon cancer at just 43, a diagnosis he had kept almost entirely private, continuing to film major roles while undergoing chemotherapy behind the scenes. His death stunned fans worldwide, who had no idea he had been fighting the disease throughout some of his most physically demanding performances. Heath Ledger is buried in Perth, Australia, his home city. He died from an accidental overdose caused by a combination of prescription medications, just months after finishing his career-defining performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight. He would go on to win a posthumous Academy Award for the role, a bittersweet honor that cemented his legacy in film history. Amy Winehouse was cremated, with her ashes kept by her family rather than placed in a public grave. The soulful singer died from alcohol poisoning at just 27, following a long and highly publicized battle with addiction that had played out in tabloids for years. Her death placed her among the tragic members of the so-called 27 Club of musicians lost at that same age. Tupac Shakur was cremated after his unsolved 1996 drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, a case that remains a source of fascination and investigation decades later. Reports have long claimed that his ashes were mixed into marijuana and smoked by members of his group, Outlaws, as a final tribute. His murder, alongside the East Coast-West Coast rap rivalry, remains one of hip-hop's most enduring mysteries. The notorious B.I.G. was also cremated after his own unsolved drive-by shooting in Los Angeles in 1997, just 6 months after Tupac's death. The two murders are often linked in the public imagination as part of the same rivalry narrative, though neither case has ever been officially solved, leaving fans and investigators still searching for answers nearly 3 decades later. Chester Bennington was cremated following his death by suicide in 2017. The Linkin Park frontman took his own life on what would have been his close friend Chris Cornell's birthday, just months after Cornell's own suicide, a devastating connection that deeply affected both the rock community and fans who had followed both artists for years. Muhammad Ali rests at Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky, his hometown. The boxing legend spent the last several decades of his life in a very public battle with Parkinson's disease, a condition many believe was worsened by the thousands of blows he absorbed across his legendary career. Despite his physical decline, he remained one of the most beloved and recognized figures in the world until his death at 74. Johnny Cash is buried in Hendersonville, Tennessee, right beside his wife, June Carter Cash. He died from complications of diabetes just 4 months after she passed away, a timeline that many close to him described as dying of a broken heart. Their decades-long musical and romantic partnership remains one of country music's most enduring love stories. Judy Garland now rests at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, after her family had her remains relocated there from New York in 2017, nearly 50 years after her death. The Wizard of Oz star died from an accidental barbiturate overdose at just 47, her passing marking the tragic end of a life spent almost entirely in the spotlight since childhood. James Dean is buried in Fairmount, Indiana, the small town where he grew up. He died in a high-speed car crash at just 24, only weeks before the release of Rebel Without a Cause, the film that would come to define him as a symbol of youthful rebellion. His sudden death at the peak of his rising fame turned him into one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. David Bowie has no public grave. He was cremated shortly after his death from liver cancer, a diagnosis he had kept almost entirely secret for 18 months while continuing to write and release music, including his final album, Black Star, released just 2 days before he died. His ashes were reportedly scattered in Bali, according to his wishes, in a Buddhist ceremony that stayed true to his private nature until the very end. George Michael was found dead on Christmas Day 2016 at his home in England, from natural causes related to heart and liver disease. His sudden passing on such a widely celebrated holiday added an extra layer of shock and sorrow for fans, coming after years of both immense pop stardom and deeply personal public struggles that he had navigated in the spotlight. Aretha Franklin rests at Woodlawn Cemetery in Detroit, the city she called home for most of her life. The Queen of Soul died from pancreatic cancer at 76, a battle she had largely kept private from the public. Her funeral became a major cultural event, drawing tributes from former presidents, music icons, and civil rights leaders alike. Farrah Fawcett is buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. The Charlie's Angels star died from anal cancer at 62, after a long and very public battle with the disease that she documented in a widely watched television documentary. Her openness about her illness helped raise awareness for a form of cancer rarely discussed so candidly in the media. Natalie Wood is also buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park. She drowned off the coast of Santa Catalina Island in 1981, under circumstances that remain disputed to this day. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially reclassified her death as a homicide investigation in 2018, though the case remains unsolved, keeping her death one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. Selena Quintanilla is buried in Corpus Christi, Texas, near where she grew up. The beloved Tejano singer was murdered by the president of her own fan club, a woman she had trusted and employed, in an act that shocked the Latino community and the music world at large. She was just 23, and her death is often credited with bringing Latin music into the American mainstream in the years that followed. Bruce Lee rests at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington. The martial arts icon died suddenly at just 32 from cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain, with the exact underlying cause still debated by medical experts decades later. His death came just weeks before the release of Enter the Dragon, the film that would cement his legacy as a global icon. River Phoenix died outside the Viper Room nightclub in Los Angeles from a drug overdose at just 23, cutting short one of the most promising acting careers of his generation. His death shocked Hollywood, coming at the height of his rising fame, and remains a frequently cited cautionary tale about the pressures faced by young stars in the industry. Anna Nicole Smith died from an accidental drug overdose at 39, in a death that eerily echoed the loss of her own son just 5 months earlier from a similar cause. Her life and death played out almost entirely in the public eye, making her one of the most tabloid-covered celebrities of her era, both before and after her passing. Sharon Tate is buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. The actress was murdered by members of the Manson family in 1969 while 8 months pregnant, a crime that horrified the nation and came to symbolize the dark end of the 1960s counterculture era. She was just 26 at the time of her death. John Belushi is buried at Abels Hill Cemetery in Chilmark, Massachusetts. The Saturday Night Live and Blues Brothers star died from a drug overdose at the Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles, a combination of heroin and cocaine known as a speedball. His death at just 33 became one of the most talked about cautionary tales in comedy history. Bob Marley rests at his birthplace of 9 Mile, Jamaica. The reggae icon died from melanoma that had spread from an injury on his toe, a diagnosis he initially delayed treating due to religious beliefs. He was just 36 when he passed, but his global influence on music and culture continued to grow long after his death. Nipsey Hussle was shot and killed outside his own clothing store in Los Angeles in 2019 in an attack carried out by a man he had known for years. The rapper and community activist was just 33, and his death sparked an outpouring of grief across the hip-hop community and the city he had worked hard to uplift through local investment. Weth XX Tentacion was shot during an apparent robbery outside a motorsports dealership in Florida in 2018, at just 20 years old. Despite his young age and controversial personal history, he had already become one of the most streamed artists of his generation, and his sudden death sparked intense debate about his legacy and influence on a new era of music. Steve Irwin died after being pierced through the chest by a stingray barb while filming a documentary segment on the Great Barrier Reef in 2006. The beloved crocodile hunter was just 44, and his death shocked fans worldwide who had watched him fearlessly work with dangerous animals for years, making his freak accident all the more unexpected. Anton Yelchin died in a bizarre accident at just 27, when his own car rolled backward down his steep driveway, and pinned him against a security fence and a brick mailbox pillar. The Star Trek actor's sudden and unusual death shocked fans and colleagues, coming at a time when his career was steadily rising. Paul Walker died in a high-speed car crash in Santa Clarita, California, at 40, as a passenger in a friend's Porsche that lost control and struck a series of trees and a lamppost. The Fast and Furious star's death mid-franchise deeply affected both his co-stars and fans, and the series famously wrote a tribute into the film he was working on at the time. Naya Rivera drowned while swimming with her young son at Lake Peru in California in 2020. The Glee actress had reportedly used her remaining strength to help push her son back onto their rental boat before going under herself. She was just 33, and her death left fans of the show devastated, coming years after the show had already faced other tragic losses among its cast. Matthew Perry was found dead in the hot tub of his Los Angeles home in 2023, at 54. His death was linked to the acute effects of ketamine, a substance he had reportedly been using in a medically supervised context for depression treatment before his passing. He had spoken openly for years about his long struggles with addiction, making his death a somber capstone to a story he had shared candidly in his memoir. Lisa Marie Presley is buried at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, resting beside her father, Elvis. She died from cardiac arrest at 54, just months after speaking at the funeral of her own son. Her passing brought the Presley family story full circle, reuniting father and daughter at the very place that had defined both of their lives. 40 lives, 40 legacies, and 40 final resting places that tell us just as much about how they lived as how they left us. If you enjoyed this tribute, let us know which story stayed with you most, and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives and legacies of the icons who shaped our world.